You ever have one of those mornings where you swear the universe is testing your patience just to see if you'll snap? That was me staring out my own kitchen window, mug of coffee halfway to my lips, watching Brenda Carlisle, our self-crowned HOA president, march right up onto my lawn like she was leading some kind of suburban military coup. I mean it, she had backup too, 6 folks in neon green vests that actually read community vigilance in bold black letters like some off-brand SWAT team for picky neighbors. And right there in broad daylight, Gary, their so-called muscle, was heading for my gate with bolt cutters as big as my leg. And you know what really burned? I knew this whole mess was about to blow up, and not in a quiet way either. Let me tell you the sound of those cutters biting into my grandfather's old padlock. It's not something I'll ever forget. Pure entitled metal-on-metal arrogance echoing through the pecan trees, slicing up the peaceful morning before sunrise even had a chance. That lock's been there for 40 years, since this patch was nothing but farm before Oak Haven Heights was even a developer's pipe dream. I wanted to run outside, start hollering, but my lawyer, Sarah's voice was ringing in my head, cool and steady. Let them make the mistake, Noah. Document everything. So that's what I did, just stood there coffee cooling, watching the inspection squad storm my workshop like they were storming Normandy. Brenda, in her blinding white polo and clipboard like a battle shield, shouted out to the whole block that she was exercising her right as HOA president to inspect my property for code violations. Neighbors started gathering, rubberneckers mostly, probably half hoping for a good show. All I could do was call Sarah and whisper, "They just cut the lock. It's all on camera." She didn't even skip a beat. "Don't engage Noah. Call 911 right now. I'm filing the complaint for criminal mischief and harassment." You ever feel like you're watching your own life unfold from the outside? That's how it felt, dialing 911, calmly explaining that I was being invaded, 6 people on private property, damaging my gate, and I felt threatened. Not the first time either, third in a month after 5 years of low-key feuding over this land. See, my workshop is an old post and beam barn smack in the center of 15 acres, way before the HOA, way before Brenda, way before any of these folks cared what happened out here. My deed is ironclad, never signed one of their covenants, not part of their club, not once. I restore antique furniture for a living, now used to work the docks until my back went out. And that barn isn't just a building, it's my whole legacy. I'd shown Brenda the deed. Had Sarah write the letter, explained it all politely a dozen times. But Brenda, she lived in her own little kingdom. Her clipboard made her queen, and state law was just a suggestion. She'd convinced herself my place was an eyesore, a threat to property values. 2 weeks back, she sent out an email blast, painted me as some dangerous rebel, said my barn was lowering everyone's investment, asked if I was building a meth lab. That one made the rounds. I kept every message, every neighbor's concerned text, every bit of it. Upgraded my cameras too, 8 of them now streaming right to the cloud. Then 5 nights ago, the story changed a twist I honestly didn't see coming. I was sanding an old cabinet late at night when I heard footsteps near the makeshift bed in the barn. Turns out my high school buddy, Jake Riley, captain at the county sheriff's office, was recovering from knee surgery and needed somewhere quiet to crash for a few weeks. Nobody, especially Brenda, needed to know the county sheriff was living in my barn yet. Fast forward to that morning, Brenda and her army had just cut the lock, but it was the police who showed up next. 3 cruisers, blue and red lights bouncing off the living room walls. Brenda came striding out of my workshop, waving that clipboard like she was directing traffic, already spinning her story for the cops. I watched them listen, patient, stone-faced. When it was my turn, I had every document ready, every video queued up. An officer told me quietly that I had a rock-solid case, trespassing, property damage, the works. But Brenda, she didn't retreat. She regrouped. That night, she called an emergency HOA meeting, claimed my barn was tanking home values by 12%. Seriously, 12%, like she'd run the numbers herself. My last appraisal said the opposite vintage barn, well kept, adds value. I forwarded that to Sarah right away. Then came a threatening letter from a fake law firm, Oak Haven Law Partners, demanding $500 a day in fines. Please, at that point, it was just desperation. Sarah laughed. That's harassment and maybe even fraud. Time to get the county attorney involved. And then Brenda made her fatal mistake. She posted an emergency inspection notice for Saturday, invited the whole neighborhood to come watch as she tried to take action against my property. That's when I realized she wasn't just trying to enforce rules, she was staging a public execution, hoping to scare me into submission. I spent the next 2 days getting ready. Jake and I had a talk, him sitting with his knee wrapped me, staring at the wood grain. You sure you want to be in the middle of this? I asked. Jake just grinned. Noah, I'm always involved when someone breaks the law, badge or no badge. If they cross the line, I'm calling for backup. Thursday, I met with Anna, a financial analyst, quiet, barely looked me in the eye. She slid a USB drive across the table. Brenda's been embezzling $78,000 in 2 years. Fake landscaping, bogus security upgrades, a salary she gave herself. Anna was scared, but she couldn't live with it anymore. I promised her if anything came down, she'd be protected. Last piece of the puzzle, Friday night I called Preston, my drone pilot neighbor. Can you film tomorrow? He was all in, needed someone who wasn't directly involved to document the whole circus. So Saturday morning, I put a cheap padlock on the gate, the kind that snaps with one good squeeze, just to make sure the evidence was clean. Jake was in the barn, civilian clothes badge on the table. He made a call, let the sheriff's department know there was a potential armed confrontation at my address, that he was there as a civilian witness. By 8:45, the road was a parking lot, neighbors everywhere waiting for the show. Brenda arrived in style, 3 black SUVs like some HOA motorcade. She strutted up, sunglasses, blazer, clipboard, flanked by her vigilance squad. Gary looked nervous, but after a nod from Brenda, the bolt cutters came out again. Crack, the lock snapped. The crowd gasped. Brenda shoved open the gate, marched right into my barn, her minions in tow. Inside she found, well, not what she expected. My tools, my workshop, my friend Jake's makeshift bed, and a sheriff's radio on the table. I stepped onto the porch, phone in hand, just as the sirens rolled up. 4 police cruisers, then a black tactical van. 8 officers, some in full tactical gear, stepped out. The crowd went dead silent. Brenda froze. Gary dropped the bolt cutters, eyes wide as dinner plates. Lead officer strolled up, hand on his belt. Ma'am, we received a report of trespassing and property damage. Can you explain your presence here? Brenda started in with her HOA inspection spiel, voice getting higher with every word. Do you have the owner's permission? He asked. Brenda snapped back. We don't need permission. We are the HOA. Officer didn't blink. That's not how property law works. And then the kicker, the barn door opened and Jake stepped out, favoring his knee but standing tall. His badge caught the sunlight bright as day. Whisper went through the crowd. The officers snapped to attention. Brenda's whole world tilted on its axis. Who are you? She demanded, her voice cracking. Why are you in his barn? Jake answered. I'm Captain Jake Riley, Davidson County Sheriff's Office. I've been a guest here for 3 weeks, recovering from surgery. Mr. Briggs is a personal friend. The mood flipped in an instant. Gary backed away, mumbling, You didn't say there was a sheriff. Brenda, desperate now, shrieked about conflict of interest, called the whole thing corrupt. Jake's voice stayed calm, steady. Mrs. Carlisle, this property isn't under HOA jurisdiction. Mr. Briggs never signed your covenants. You just committed criminal trespass and criminal mischief witnessed by an officer. And yes, even off duty, I am obligated to report what I see. The crowd was stone silent. Brenda's face red as a beet. We were just trying to protect property values. He's a threat. I finally stepped forward, voice calm. Independent appraisal. 6 months ago, Barn increases value by up to 5%. Full report available. Email me if you want proof. Neighbors called out their emails. Yeah, people can surprise you. Officer Morrison, the lead, turned to Brenda. Ma'am, you're under arrest for criminal trespass and property damage. Please put your hands behind your back. Brenda tried to fight, shrieking about lawsuits and connections, until Jake quietly warned, everything's being recorded, stop now. When the cuffs clicked, you could have heard a pin drop. She screamed she'd sue everyone, still clinging to her fantasy of power. Jake, gentle as ever, said, "You had influence, Mrs. Carlyle, not power. Influence is given, power is taken. Today we called your bluff." The others, Gary the vigilantes, they were detained too, depending on how cooperative they wanted to be. Gary all but begged. "She threatened to fire me." Cops stayed until noon, collected statements, footage, the busted lock. Sarah arrived grinning. "We're filing for harassment, defamation, emotional distress, everything." 3 days later, the county announced a formal investigation into Brenda's embezzlement thanks to Anna's evidence. Brenda, facing criminal charges, now had felony fraud on her record, too. The neighborhood chat blew up, folks pouring out stories of Brenda's threats control every little fence or garden complaint. She hadn't been protecting the community, she'd been ruling it. Her sentencing was months later. She pled guilty, 3 years probation, restitution of every stolen penny, permanent ban from any HOA board in the state. At the hearing, I stood up and told the court, I don't want revenge, I want accountability. Power without accountability destroys everything. That's tyranny, even in a small town. Things finally settled. Anna became HOA president, the board apologized in public, covered my legal fees, and admitted in writing that my land was never, ever under their rule. Jake's back at work, but still stops by for coffee, told me they renamed the community clubhouse Integrity Hall. I put a new lock on my gate, hand-carved a sign beside it. Boundaries are respect. Sometimes people ask, was it worth it? All the stress, the chaos? And I always tell them it was never about the barn. It was about principle. Nobody gets to cross a line that was never theirs. Brenda thought she was the law, but law belongs to all of us if we choose to stand up for it. So, what about you? Would you have gone after her for everything? Max damages, civil court, the whole 9 yards? Or was seeing her face justice and pay restitution enough? Drop a comment below. Let's talk about power property and what real community means. And hey, if you want more stories like this, hit like and subscribe. Trust me, in Oak Haven Valley, there's always another chapter.